Thank you for the organizers for the invitation to present uh, our work on the East African Rift system, specifically in the northern Afar, in the central Afar, I should say. And this work was conducted with my collaborators, Sasha, Carolina, Alessandro, Derek, two Dereks, Derek Kier and Derek Neuhaus and Giacomo Corti. So I present this work, but it was actually a collaborative effort. So what we see here is a photo showing a beautiful fault setting in the northern Afar in the Bahuma and the Hararu segment. And this will be the topic of my talk for the coming 10 to 15 minutes. But I would like to explain a little bit about the present day geometry of the East African Rift system, how it starts. So here we have West and East Gondwana, and we have this, the East African origin, which is oriented more or less north-south, which is similar to the present day, the East African Rift system. So it's usually people compare the present day geometry of the rift, the East African Rift in general, due to on the boundary between West and East Gondwana, and this was later reactivated into the present-day East African Rift system. And the Afar Rift is located in the northern part of this East African Rift system. It's a plate boundary between the Arabian plate, which is here, the African plate or the Nubian plate to the west, and the Somalian plate. So the simultaneous moving or opening of these three plates induce rifting in the central Afar on in Afar in general. And during this opening, there are rifts propagating into this zone, and we normally call it the Afar triple junction because it's a plate boundary where these three rifts supposed to meet. And previous numerical and analog modeling studies also captured this geometry by moving the three plates, fixing one plate, usually Nubia is fixed, and then moving Arabia and Somalia. But the present day tectonics in the region is best explained by the northeastward motion of the Arabian plate. And it explains well what we see in the central Afar or in northern Afar as well. So the geometry of the faults are, it sounded like they are responding to the northeastward motion of the Arabian plate. And this is very well captured by numerical and analog modeling studies and field observations. But when we zoom into the central Afar, it becomes a bit complicated because it's not just a simple northwest, southeast oriented faults. Rather, we see block rotation, which complicates the whole scenario. And that's what I'm going to talk about in today's talk. So here is a central Afar, which is shown by this oval shape. And then we have these rifts, which are rift segments, which are propagating or actually actively opening in the central Afar. We have the rift which is propagating to the south or to the east, Ertale, Tatale, and Dabahu magmatic segments. And to the east, we have the, so I have to use this. Yeah. So Gulf of Aden, which propagates to the west, and Assad. So specifically, we try to understand how this Assad segment and the Dabahum and Hararo segments link. And this is the focus of my talk, to be exact. But I will show you also some numerical modeling studies we just conducted just to show what's happening also in the northern Afar. And in these segments, there are a couple of ideas. The first one is that, yeah, so the two rifts are propagating. This is the Red Sea Rift, which is propagating into the central Afar, and this is the Gulf of Aden. So our interest is to see how the two rifts link. And the previous studies were suggesting a couple of mechanisms, and some of them are based on paleomagnetic studies. For example, in the central Afar, Paleomagnetic observations indicate clockwise rotation of crustal blocks, but the detailed mechanism of this rotation is different. One study shows that there are bookshelf faultings, and these are bounded by dextral faulting, and within the blocks there are sinistral uh, faults, strike slip faults, and then this region is rotating in a bookshelf manner. The other study shows that the whole region deforms like in a block like deformation, but in general, what they observed is that there is a clockwise block rotation. A recent study shows that instead of this study also the study by Carolina Pali and colleagues used INSAR data, but they also compiled the already existing earthquake focal mechanisms. And they showed that instead of this strike slip motion, the blocks are moving, opening in response to the northeast motion of the Arabia plate. So there are no strike slip motion, which is well supported by earthquake focal mechanisms. And the other study shows that there are active faults which are propagating in a northwest southeast direction. That means they're trying to link the Asal segment, which is shown here, to the Dabahu Mandahararo segment. So when we summarize everything, we see block rotation is proposed. A direct linkage between the two rifts is also proposed. And we try to compare it with the already existing model of rift connections. So these are the already existing models well summarized by uh, this study. They show that linkage can occur using bookshelf faulting or clockwise block rotation or due to the development of initial veins, or in some cases a proto-transform fault, which later rotates to become a pure strike slip motion. So we have seen most of these rift connection styles proposed for the central Afar. So in order to better understand the rift linkage, we combined studies from INSAR and numerical modeling. So I will show you some INSAR results. And as we clearly see here, the highest strain rate is occurring in the Dabahu and Asal segments, as these are active segments due to mechanical and thermal weakening of the region. So they form a kind of direct linkage, which is also in agreement with the earthquake focal mechanisms and distribution of seismicity. But this shows what's happening today. We don't know what was happening in the past. We have some idea based on paleomagnetic studies, but the INSAR data shows what's happening only today. So for that reason, we conduct a numerical modeling experiment. We try to design a setup where we can see how two rifts connect. So we have this Gulf of Aden, which is deflected to the northwest, and the Red Sea, which is oriented northwest southeast. And some studies suggest clockwise rotation, others show a kind of initiation of a transform linkage. So we have a setup, a 3D box model setup using a viscoplastic rheology. And we have this a setup where we can model the upper crust and the lower crust. In this case, we use just a crust, which is represented by wet anorthite, and lithospheric mantle and astenospheric mantle represented by dry and wet olivine, respectively. So we have a thermal and rheological perturbation here where we can initiate deformation at the rift center. And the most important part of this linkage is based on a previous study by Derek Neuharz and colleagues shows that this kind of linkage is highly dependent on the this offset, specifically the x offset. So we play with these parameters, the x offset, and also with the lithospheric thickness, because based on this study I just mentioned, these are the most important parameters that control how to propagating rifts connect. So for this, we test x offset 50, 100, and 150 kilometer. by varying the lithospheric thickness from 60 to 80 kilometer. So I will show you a model animation, how linkage occurs. As you see here, we have two rifts here, and then we,
Ameha, you're at about 10 minutes now.
okay. So we see, I think I should jump to the figures. So here in the first phase, after 2 million years, we have a clockwise rotation of crustal blocks. And then later, the tips which are overlapping become dying. And then we see a direct linkage between the two segments. And then we see at this stage kind of initial developments of rift segments or magmatic segments or tectonic segments. Finally, they make a direct linkage. So this is the evolution we see. But we try to test the X offset and the lithospheric thickness. And here we have a sweet spot which better explains what's happening in the central Afar. So this X offset and lithospheric thickness fits well with the observed offset between the Dabahuma and the Hararo and the Asal segments and the lithospheric thickness in the region. But we try to extend this observation to the northern Afar, where we have a kind of linkage or a connection between Tat Ale and Dabahuma and the Hararo segments. So what we did was we simply switch the segments. So in this case, Tata Ale is to the east and Dabahu is to the west. And the evolution shows that it's basically the same, but in this case, rotation of crustal blocks is in a counterclockwise sense, which is similar to paleomagnetically detected counterclockwise rotation between the Tata Ale and Dabahuma and the Hararo segments. So I will show you here. There is a block rotation in a counterclockwise sense and development of initial segments, which are more or less similar to what we see between the Tata Ale and Dabahu segments. Even further to the north between Erta Ale and Tata Ale segments, we have already a setup where we tested the X offset and lithospheric thickness. So the closer the two segments are, in this case, Erta Ale and Tata Ale, we see a direct linkage. Also, a study by Alessandro La Rosa and colleagues shows that it's much more complicated than that, but it's more or less a direct linkage between two segments. So at the end, our study shows that the connection between different reef segments in Afar is accommodated by rotation of crustal blocks, initial on segments, strike slip faults at reef tips. And these strain accommodation mechanisms are important at different stage of rift linkage. So these contrasting rift linkage mechanisms can be reconciled when we consider the space-time evolution of rifts. That was it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for the nice talk, Ameha. If you have any questions, please unmute and ask. Okay, I saw Katie's hand first. So, Katie, do you want to go?
Yeah, thanks very much. Really interesting talk. So, what's the evidence you presented for a connection between the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden rift seemed to be that the DMH and the Assal segments were both active, are both active in the last few decades. But all of these rifts are, cycle through periods of quiescence and activity. So, what's the particular driver for making a connection between those two specifically?
Yeah, good question. So what we see is that the distribution of seismicity is localized between these two segments, the Asal and the Dabahuma and the Hararo segments, and that region is quite active compared to the other parts of the central Afar, excluding the Dabahu and the Asal segments. And also the recent analysis, which is led by Alessandro, shows that there is a direction of a kind of linkage between the two segments based on the activity of the faults. And all these evidences, in addition to the numerical modeling results we have, indicate that there is a direct linkage which is going on between the Asal and Dabahuma and the Hararo segments.
Okay, just as a follow-up, I mean, there's a huge difference in the timescales. We're talking several decades on the one hand and millions of years for the numerical modeling on the other hand.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sasha, I saw your hands up, and after Sasha, we'll move to the next speaker.
No, I was just applauding. That's it. I don't have a question.
Thank you. Okay, I have a quick one. So my question is a little bit related to Kadi's question. But I would rather ask this way: is it possible to model what might have happened earlier when the Gulf of Aden was propagating southwestward into Afar and interacting with rifts, geometries associated with the Red Sea trend? Do you get what I mean? Prior to the emplacement of the subparallel, not west trending segments that you tested.
Yeah,
Is that possible?
I think it's possible, but it would be uh, numerically challenging, I would
I
say.
can imagine.
Yeah, but
Anyway,
what we try to see here is that the two rifts are almost parallel now, so that makes it easier for us to model. But I think we can model even before the deflection. I think
right.
Sasha,
Right.
Sasha probably explains this better, but I think it's possible.
Good to know. All right. Thank you. That was a nice talk.